Here's a single photograph. Oyama, founder of Kyokushin Karate. Sawai Kenichi, said to have brought authentic Chinese martial arts to Japan. So Neichu, top disciple of Yamaguchi Gōgen, the de facto founder of mainland Goju Ryu, and Mazoyama's karate master. He is Ushijima Tatsukuma, the master of Kimura Masahiko, the judoka known for defeating Helio Gracie, the father of Rickson and Royce Gracie and the originator of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. This is the untold story of a renowned martial artist who, in wartime Japan, was so troubled for his nation that he even plotted the assassination of the Prime Minister. In 1904, in Kumamoto, to a family running an oil business, was born the man later called the Demon. His name, Ushijima Tatsukuma. Though he first studied kendo, at 15 he entered the Kyushin Ryu, one of 3 major Higo Jujutsu schools, at the urging of his elder brother. In martial Japan, it was natural to study swordsmanship, jujutsu, spear, and archery in parallel. Shifting from kendo to judo was nothing unusual. In Kumamoto at the time, traditional jujutsu was still more popular than Kodokan Judo. The Higo schools such as Kyushin Ryu preserved the lethal battlefield techniques of the samurai. In matches, there was no victory except through surrender. Sometimes practitioners wore short bakudo at their waists, and after throwing and pinning an opponent, would mime cutting the neck to claim victory. Unlike modern judo, which emphasizes sport, here lived the grim remnants of life and death combat. Ushijima went on to win 3 consecutive titles at the Meiji Shrine Tournament, 1925-27, then considered Japan's de facto judo championship. In 1929, at the first imperial tournament held before the royal family, he advanced through all preliminaries by ippon, and in the finals fought a grueling 25-minute battle with the legendary Tamio Kurihara, losing only by decision. Vowing revenge, Ushijima moved to Tokyo, where he taught at the Imperial Guard and Metropolitan Police while relentlessly driving himself. He sparred over 40 rounds a day. After training, his hands were so stiff they would not open until he soaked them in hot water. He chewed tea leaves, trained bare-chested carrying boulders, and struck giant trees for uchikomi practice. Ushijima did this 4,000 times every day. Before matches, he drank softshell turtle's blood and took powdered viper for spirit. In awe, people called him Oni no Ushijima, Ushijima the Demon. When the All Japan Championships were established, he stumbled in the Tokyo qualifiers of the inaugural 1930 tournament, thrown by Kozo Soni, who later taught judo to Oyama. But he rebounded, winning the second, 1931, and third, 1932 tournaments back-to-back. Counting his Meiji Shrine victories, he essentially held the equivalent of today's All Japan Championship 5 times. Yet in 1934, weakened by liver fluke disease, he lost at the Imperial Tournament commemorating the Crown Prince's birth. From then on, he devoted himself to training the next generation. At his alma mater, Chinsei Middle School, Ushijima met a gifted youth, Masahiko Kimura, later hailed as the greatest judoka of all time. As captain, Kimura led his school to a national title and at just 16, became the youngest ever to earn 4th Dan. Recognizing his genius, Ushijima persuaded Kimura's family to let him move to Tokyo, where he joined Ushijima's dojo, the Ushijima Juku. There, while enrolled at Takushoku University Prep, Kimura won the National High School Judo Championships on his first try. In 1937, he claimed the All Japan Championship at age 20 years and 1 month, the youngest in history. He would go on to achieve 3 consecutive All Japan titles, 1937-39, an unprecedented feat. The following year came the Third Imperial Tournament, held in the Imperial Dojo at the palace to celebrate the 2600th anniversary of Emperor Jimmu's enthronement. Ushijima, who had once lost in the same event, entrusted Kimura with fulfilling his unachieved dream. When Kimura triumphed, Ushijima quietly wept, recalling the days of waterfall training he had endured to pray for his disciples' success. 7 years after retiring, in 1941, Ushijima was said to have challenged the champion of Chinese Shuai Jiao in Beijing. Accounts of the rules and outcome vary. It is said that they did not play a match, but rather exchanged ideas for friendship and technical exchange. But Ushijima was more than a martial artist. Amid wartime militarism, he became active as a thinker, deepening ties with Kanji Ishihara, mastermind of the Manchurian Incident. Fukushima Seizaburo, a 9th Dan judoka, was born in 1890 in Kumamoto Prefecture, the same as Ushijima. He established his career at the Butokukai, Japan's highest martial arts educational institution. By his 30s, he was teaching at the Budo Vocational School in Kyoto. His students remembered him as a very gentle man. One disciple described his teaching style this way: "Sensei never shouted or got angry. When he demonstrated grappling techniques, he moved as lightly as a feather. Even though his opponent couldn't move, it felt as if they were enveloped in air." This was the true essence of judo itself: maximum efficiency with minimum effort. But what set Fukushima apart from other martial artists of his time was an unprecedented event. In 1936, at the age of 46, together with Ushijima, he founded a unique dojo called Gihokai. Ushijima had opened a dojo in Tokyo, but he was also deeply involved in the activities of the Gihokai, almost as if it were a branch of his own. Established on Fukushima's own property, this dojo was more than just a training hall. With 80 tatami mats, it was one of the largest dojos of the time. Students were accepted regardless of social status or ethnicity. The son of a local tofu maker trained alongside university students, and students from colonial Korea and China sweated shoulder to shoulder with Japanese peers without discrimination. Most notably, Fukushima invited Gōgen Yamaguchi, the effective founder of mainland Goju-ryu karate, to teach karate in his dojo. At a time when strict adherence to one's style was the norm, allowing different martial arts to mix was extremely rare. Furthermore, since karate had only just arrived in Japan from Okinawa, formerly the independent Ryukyu Kingdom, it was groundbreaking for judo, with its long Japanese history, to actively learn from this new martial art. This episode speaks volumes about Fukushima's broad-mindedness. What linked these men together was the East Asia League, an ideological group inspired by Ishihara Kanji. Ishihara, who directed the Manchurian Incident in 1931, stood apart from simple nationalism. He advocated the principle of Minzoku Kaiōwa, ethnic harmony, envisioning an empire led by Japan in which Chinese, Koreans, Manchurians, Mongols, and Japanese cooperated as equals. This was a revolutionary concept for its time. While many Japanese military leaders saw other Asians merely as subjects to be ruled, Ishihara sincerely believed in a cooperative relationship under the emperor, on equal footing. He wrote extensively about the coming final war, insisting that only a united East Asia could stand against the West. It is believed that Fukushima met Ishihara around 1937 through military connections. From that moment, something clicked. Fukushima found in Ishihara's philosophy the global perspective he had never gained from martial training alone. Ushijima, too, later said that Ishihara gave him the answer to a lifelong question: how can martial arts training serve society? The dojo they ran, Gihokai, in effect became a kind of salon for the East Asia League. In 1938, Fukushima was appointed martial arts advisor to Kenkoku University, established in Manchukuo. The university was designed to train the administrative elite of the puppet state, academically equal to the imperial universities and martially equal to the Butokukai. At Kenkoku University, Minzoku Kyowa was practiced. The 5 tribes lived, ate, and trained together. Martial arts education reflected this integrative spirit. Unlike traditional Japanese dojos, where harsh hierarchies meant juniors were bullied in the name of spiritual training and could only ever answer yes to seniors, here students debated techniques, and even questioning their teachers was encouraged. This approach bore the clear influence of Fukushima. Students were trained not just in combat, but in conflict resolution and leadership. After training, lecturers from Ishihara's East Asia League were invited to discuss new models of international relations. This was not mere propaganda. It was an intellectual exchange where students could ask hard questions openly. This represented a virtually unprecedented integration of martial training and critical thinking in Japanese martial education. Yet, despite the progressive appearance, it was still part of imperialist structures. Minzoku Kaiōa ultimately meant an empire led by Japan, and the students were being groomed to manage the occupied territories. Even so, Fukushima sincerely believed in the ideals he promoted. As the war grew more brutal, he remained faithful to Ishihara's Pan-Asianism. Even after Ishihara opposed war with the US and became isolated within the military, Fukushima continued supporting East Asia League activities despite police surveillance and personal risks. One of his Korean students, So Neichu, Japanese reading, recalled his time at the Gihokai dojo. There was no selfishness, no racial discrimination. Fukushima-sensei judged us only on ability and character. Even when I struggled with the political meaning of what I was learning, he never imposed his views, but encouraged me to think for myself. At a time when Koreans from the colonies were generally looked down upon in Japan, Fukushima treated So like his own son. Incidentally, So was Yamaguchi Gōgen's top disciple. This commemorative photo taken after the Butoku Festival, held at the Dai Nippon Butoku Kai, brings together some of the top instructors in the karate world on the mainland. When Yamaguchi undertook intelligence work in Manchuria under Ishihara's orders, So taught karate at Gihokai, and even when Ushijima visited Gihokai dojo with Kimura, gave Kimura lessons in karate. So wished to follow Yamaguchi to Manchuria, but Fukushima refused to let him go. Later, So became one of Ishiwara's close aides and after the war, a leader among resident Koreans in Japan. He admired Ushijima like an elder brother, and, after losing his home in wartime bombing, lived in Ushijima's house, a sign of their closeness. In the Goju Ryu list, So's name appears next to Yamaguchi Gōgen, and his address is Ushijima's home. So was also one of the main instructors of karate to Oyama, the later founder of Kyokushin Karate. Through this link, Oyama developed deep connections with Ushijima and Kimura. After the war, So rose to a rank second only to Yamaguchi in mainland Goju-ryu karate, while Ushijima became a special advisor to the same school. These men were all among Japan's top martial artists of the era, bound together under Ishihara Kanji's East Asia League. Meanwhile, Ishihara, having clashed bitterly with future Prime Minister Tōjō Hideki, was demoted and forced into the reserves in March 1941. In October of that year, the Tōjō cabinet was formed, and 2 months later, on December 8th, the Pearl Harbor attack plunged Japan and the United States into war. At first, Japan advanced rapidly, but the tide turned after the defeat at the Battle of Midway in June 1942, making eventual defeat inevitable. Still, Prime Minister Tōjō, the military, the government, and the media colluded to maintain a facade of victory, deceiving the people. Ushijima evacuated his family but remained behind to safeguard his dojo in Tokyo. Many of his students had already left for the front under student conscription, leaving him in a silent, empty dojo. In June 1944, Army Major Tsunoda, while working at the General Staff headquarters, read secret documents and was shocked to discover Japan's crushing defeats and dire situation. Stunned, he contacted Ushijima. After sorting through and reading the top-secret documents, it was clear beyond doubt that Japan would lose. Yet Tōjō continues to deceive the people, shamelessly proclaiming victory after victory. Even if I grant that he is acting without selfish motives and from good intentions, it is still a policy of tyranny cloaked in benevolence. The question now is no longer about victory, but how to bring this war to an end. That is the most urgent issue before us. The two concluded that Tōjō's resignation was essential to saving the nation. They drafted a proposal titled Observations on the Current Situation of the Greater East Asia War and planned to deliver it to the emperor through a member of the imperial family. Carrying the document, Ushijima and Sonoda visited Kanji Ishihara, who was living in seclusion in Yamagata. After reading the paper, Ishihara paused at a marginal note that read, "Extraordinary measures. If all else fails, Tōjō must be slain." He asked for one night to consider. The next morning, the document bore Ishihara's red pencil note, "Agree to slay." With Ishihara's consent, the two returned to Tokyo and began plotting the assassination. Ushijima, who had become deeply devoted to Ishihara's ideas such as the Final World War theory and the East Asia League movement, believed in the maxim, "The essence of martial arts is virtue." For him, martial arts were inseparable from national spirit and the overcoming of crises, driving him into political action. Their audacious plan was to drop a cyanide gas bomb from a pine tree in front of the imperial palace onto Tōjō's open car. However, the conspiracy was exposed through the secret report of Prince Mikasa, and on September 3, 1944, Ushijima was arrested by the military police on charges of plotting Tōjō's assassination. When his disciple Kimura rushed to Tokyo upon hearing the news, the city lay in ruins from air raids, yet Ushijima's dojo miraculously survived, with a handful of students guarding it in concern for their teacher. Military police soon stormed in, and Kimura, Ushijima's closest disciple, was also arrested on suspicion of conspiracy. Kimura endured brutal torture for hours but insisted, "I know nothing." In the end, the military police, lacking sufficient evidence, released him and ordered him back to the countryside. However, as Kimura himself had been involved in the East Asia League activities alongside his teacher, whether he was truly uninvolved remains debated. Behind Ushijima's actions lay the convergence of Ishihara's ideology, fierce opposition to the Tōjō regime, and an acute sense of Japan's impending defeat. He was not only a judoka but also a thinker who felt responsible for the nation's fate, and in righteous indignation he stepped onto the path of plotting the Prime Minister's assassination. By the time judgment was rendered, the war had ended, the Tōjō cabinet had collapsed, and Ushijima and the others were released without indictment. The war's end also marked the conclusion of Ushijima's activities as a political thinker. The story of how Fukushima, Ushijima, Yamaguchi, So, and Oyama were bound by ideology illustrates not only how martial arts could contribute to education and society, but also how they risked being used as tools of political ideology. Even when practitioners believed they were serving noble ideals, they could end up being exploited. Scholars point out that the tradition of unconditional obedience in martial arts education could suppress critical thinking. The intersections of martial arts, education, and politics continue in various forms today. Understanding how these relationships developed historically may help us think about how martial arts should engage with modern society and political issues. In 1949, Kimura entered the All Japan Championships despite insufficient training and won. The final against Takahiko Ishikawa went into 2 overtimes and ended in a draw, resulting in both being declared champions. This marked the end of Kimura's 15-year undefeated career. Ushijima, however, sought to protect the livelihoods of judoka, and with Kimura launched international professional judo. After Japan's defeat, judo was banned by GHQ and removed from schools. In response, the Kodokan established the All-Japan Judo Federation in 1949, aiming to reintroduce judo into education as a sport. By 1950, judo was adopted as an elective in the new middle school system, a status it retains today. Ushijima's professional judo, by contrast, aimed to revive martial judo and provide struggling judoka with a livelihood through commercialized exhibitions. However, it failed to attract popularity, and the enterprise collapsed. Kimura, who had become professional judo's champion, reluctantly switched to pro wrestling to support his ailing wife, as it offered higher pay. With Kimura gone, professional judo soon disintegrated. Although this caused a rift between master and disciple, Ushijima never ceased to care for Kimura. In 1952, Oyama toured the United States with professional judoka Endo Kokichi, performing karate demonstrations. It was, in fact, Ushijima who arranged Oyama's journey to America. The person in the center of the image is the legendary heavyweight boxing champion Jack Dempsey, and to his left is former professional judoka Endo Kokichi. In a match remembered as one of the great bouts of the Showa era, Kimura lost to Rikidozan, the national hero with backgrounds in Korean wrestling, Sirium, and sumo. The match had supposedly been scripted, but Rikidozan broke the script and suddenly turned it into a real fight. Footage shows Kimura visibly bewildered in the ring. At the moment of his disciple's defeat, Ushijima rushed into the ring and held him, an enduring testament to the master's love. Even in old age, Ushijima retained his strength, reportedly defeating young university judoka with ease in his 50s. In 1984, he was awarded the 9th Dan at the Kodokan's 100th anniversary, though many believed his achievements merited the 10th Dan. In 1985, Ushijima Tatsukuma's tumultuous life came to an end. As a judoka, as the teacher of Masahiko Kimura, still hailed by many as the strongest judoka in history, and as a thinker who fought against his era, he remains remembered as the demon Ushijima. Japan B is a channel that randomly shares information about lesser-known aspects of Japanese culture, spanning across various genres.